So good morning. My name's Sam Jordan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of InfoTrack UK. We have a webinar this morning entitled Using Technology to Increase Employee Wellbeing and Improve Profitability. So there's some really cool things to talk about there. Hopefully just not the same old things that always get talked about with regard to technology and conveyancing as well. I'm joined by Kirsty and Sam from ODT and Eden respectively. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a second. The webinar today is due to run for about 45 minutes. We will try and make sure that we incorporate some Q&A in that as well. For that, please just use the Q&A tab at the bottom. You can put questions in there as we're going along. If there's a chance to answer them within the flow of the webinar, the conversation, we will do, but probably leave them to the end and make sure that we come back to them then. And everybody can be a little bit flexible on time if we do run over that 45 minutes. If we run out of time to answer a question or we can't do it as part of this, then I'll make sure that we get back to you afterwards. And we are recording this as well, so we can make sure that a copy of this gets sent around to everybody to have a look at as well. Good, right, so first order of business is to introduce our panelists today. So Kirsty, can I start with you? Could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your company?
Yep, sure. So I'm managing partner of ODT Solicitors. We've got 4 offices. We had 3 last week, but we've just got a new one across Sussex. Our head office is in Brighton, and then we have offices in Chichester, Haywards Heath and Hurstmere Point. We're predominantly a property and litigation firm, but we also deal with family and private clients. And we're about 50 staff altogether, and mostly qualified staff. We work with a low level of support staff, just to give you a kind of overview of where we are.
Great, thank you. And Sam, the other Sam on this. I might call you Samantha, so you're confusing.
That's fine. I'm Sam Strong. I'm the head of legal practice at Eden Conveyancing. We're a new firm. We went live last year. We're solely based, also we're solely focused on residential conveyancing, with the aim that we use technology as much as possible to facilitate that and to provide excellent customer service. So we're a new firm. We went live last year, so there's about 10 of us at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we'll get into the conversation now. But perhaps I can start this by asking you how sort of techie your firms are, how technologically advanced you would consider yourselves. And Sam, I know you have probably a bit of an advantage here because you have some empirical data for this. We did something called a digital conveyancing survey and an assessment, which 300 companies have completed, and Eden Conveyancing came out top in all of that. So I know that you're quite far along that journey. So we hear from you first, and then Kirsty, it'd be good to hear about how your firm's progressing as well, please. So how digital is Eden?
Well, I always explain Eden to other people as a digital firm that happens to do law. So our basis is digital. That's where we start from. It's just that our offering happens to be law. So we come at it from probably a slightly different perspective than your traditional law firm. We are looking to adopt technology where we can, to make sure that where there is the best of breed solution out there, we're using that to provide the best customer service that we can within the residential conveyancing arena.
Brilliant. And so I know you describe yourselves as digital first. Is that right?
Yes.
So that's your lens for everything. Your digital first approach, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, where possible, we appreciate there's some situations where we can't. We have lenders that won't accept electronically signed documents, so we've got to be adaptive to that. We've got to be able to fall back on non-digital solutions if we need to, but where we can, and our preference would be to do it digitally.
Okay, great. And so just to give people a bit more information about that assessment and how well you scored, that assessment looks at every area of digital conveyancing and scores people from assessing people from the kind of least digital to the most digital options that they could use. And so if you use the most digital option available for you for every step of the conveyancing process across all kinds of different providers, you score 100%. And Eden Conveyancing score was in the 90s, the highest. So a very digital business. Kirsty, can I come to you?
Yeah, no problem.
It's okay not to be that digital.
Yeah, that's
probably very relevant for everybody else to kind of hear where you are on your journey as well, please.
Yeah, so we're not quite that digital yet. We're definitely on that journey. We're quite far progressed into becoming entirely paperless, but we haven't quite got to the end of that. And obviously all the digital solutions are part of that. So everything we do exists digitally, but we do still have some paper files. And we're kind of, as we're progressing through it, we're introducing the end part of transactions and the beginning part of transactions through digital means, but we're probably about 50% through, I'd say, at the moment, to be fair.
And what parts of the process would you say you're most digital? Is it at the beginning of onboarding, or is it post completion, or all of the hard stuff in the middle?
I'd say all the hard stuff in the middle is the most digital, and then the post completion is the thing we're really concentrating on at the moment, to get everyone across all 4 offices dealing with that as digitally as we can. And then the beginning part is going to be kind of our last stage, I suppose, of how we're making it digital.
Yeah. And Sam, what about you? Is it consistent throughout your process, or are there parts that are kind of inevitably more digital than others?
I think there are more available solutions for the beginning and the end, primarily onboarding and digital AP1s. But there's certainly options for the middle part of the process. We use things like for InfoTrack, we use things like the property report and the inquiries, which helps us to keep it a simple solution all across the board. We're doing one way, everybody's doing it the same way. And that certainly helps us with a process and a compliance point of view, I think.
Good. So I think that's really good context for everybody. So can I ask you then, what's the thing that's driven you to be more digital, or in your case, Sam, just kind of set up a firm that's digital first? So Kirsty, let's start with you. What's the main driver of being more digital in your business?
Our kind of the initial drive came just before COVID hit. Actually, that was our kind of sit down decision. Yes, we want to go paperless. This is where we want to see ourselves, and that was probably based on cost savings and also compliance, very much. Having all of the data that we knew existed in a way that we could pull it out. So when you're doing your prop form or your CQS applications, you've got everything there, nice and simply. And then obviously COVID hit. We were glad we'd already started that journey. That was really fortuitous. And then kind of following people coming back to the office after COVID, there's more of a desire for agile working, either people working part-time, at home or out of the office, or within different offices in the firm. And that really then kind of pushes that forward of the need to be paperless and consistent and have everything digital.
Perfect. And Sam, can I ask you the same question then? What's the driver for you guys?
I think a lot of what Kirsty said is right. I mean, compliance is the big thing. The insurers love the way that we work. It makes my life easier as the head of legal practice, that's for sure. And also, I think from a customer's perspective, customers use technology so much for everything else. It always seemed a bit, well, they thought I was being obtuse when I asked them to post a passport to me and fill in a paper copy of a TA6. It just seemed like we were out of step with everything else in their life, I suppose.
Yeah. Interesting. the title of this session is around kind of productivity and people. So starting with productivity, like what's the sort of the impact that you've seen on your business? Let's Sam, staying with you. In terms of productivity and where you think you'd be if you perhaps if you didn't have the digital first approach.
I think Kirsty alluded to this earlier on, the fact that she said she had fewer or very few admin staff. We don't have any. Our property lawyers deal with the case from beginning to end because we've automated or used technology as much as we can for the stuff. Whereas in previous roles, I would have had admin staff doing so, to open a file, to complete forms, to get source of funds information in, even if a property lawyer was checking it. There's a lot of admin stuff about getting data in to enable a property lawyer to make a decision. The technology enables us to have access to that information and a lot quicker without having to have people whose job it is specifically to get that, I think.
That's a huge thing, right? That's got a big thing structurally for your business, not to have people in those roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, when we're interviewing people, we're very keen to make sure that they know that that's how we work. And I think some people would almost be worried that would increase their workload, but it doesn't work like that because the technology makes it so much easier to do. And it's part of our process that it's easy for other parties to provide us with that information so that the customer can complete a protocol form. We don't need to post it out to them first. They don't need to post it back to us. It can be interactive. So it's a much quicker way of doing the same work, but in a, I say, more efficient and more productive way of doing it.
Yeah. And Kirsty, what's your experience of?
Yeah, very, very similar. It's we do have some admin staff, but very few, and the firm's always acted like that traditionally. There obviously came a point before, when we were working more traditionally, where fee earners' time was being spent doing tasks that could have been done by someone else, and then it's the choice: do you fill yourself with additional staff, which then means additional desks, which means bigger offices and higher rents, or do you start to find processes that make it possible to achieve all of those administrative tasks while the fee earners are still spending the predominant amount of their time doing the legal work that they're trained to do and that they want to do? So it definitely, solicitors are quite controlling bunch, so it's nice to see something through to the end. And it means, particularly with the post-completion stuff we're doing digitally, that means that the fee earners' time is reduced doing that, so that they've got more time for the client care and speaking to their clients and doing the legal work in the middle.
So that's for you then, that would be a kind of key benefit, people being able to kind of reuse their time in more productive ways rather than just actually the kind of doing admin quicker, for example.
Yes, yeah, and do more of what they enjoy. I don't know many people who did a law degree to do the admin. We kind of like reading all the weird Latin pieces of paper that come across our desks or across our screens now.
So from your perspective, does that mean then that your fee earners are doing more work, or that they've got more time to do the work that you would expect of them anyway?
A bit of both, I suppose, but they're doing what they're able to do. Is the work they're doing is the better quality part of the transaction. So having more time to guide the client through the transaction, particularly with property, it's a stressful moment for our clients, and having that time, which makes the service they're giving better, which means you get more repeat business and more work in. And as well as, you could potentially be doing more work, but also the work you're doing it much better.
Yeah. And Sam, for you, is it about enabling people to do more work, or kind of to focus on the kind of higher value things like Kirsty was talking about?
Yeah, I think it's the focus. And from a customer's point of view, it's the same person dealing with the same thing. So the same transaction all the way through. It's if you've got people who are phoning them for source of funds information and then phoning them for something else or to complete a form. If you've got those tasks siloed, then you end up with a customer dealing with different people for different stages of the transaction. And I don't think that works well from their point of view. And I don't think it works well from a compliance point of view either. I think it's very difficult then to have complete control and knowledge of the whole element of the transaction, to know what the customer said at the beginning about their source of funds. So I think it provides cohesiveness all the way through for everybody.
Mm-hmm. The eagle-eyed attendees will have noticed that Vicky's not with us today. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it at the last minute. Vicky is the COO at Pepperell's. So I'll just provide a bit of share a bit of her experience in this area. One of the things that she said to me was actually the way that they've used and implemented technology is actually taken the admin burden away from junior staff, who've then been able to actually do higher value tasks. And she's seen them being able to start doing fee earning work more quickly, those kinds of things. So it's a similar thing. They still have those teams of people, but they're actually being able to kind of point them at the less administrative tasks and the higher value tasks. And I think, to your point, the things that they probably got into the profession to want to do, rather than the kind of research and admin of onboarding and searches and all that kind of stuff. So which kind of does bring us on to then the kind of impact on people. What have you seen as the impact on your people of the digital changing the way that they work then and changing that focus? Sam, can I start with you? So you've recruited lots of people in the last year or so since you joined up. How's their experience different from perhaps what they might have had previously in their careers?
I think obviously they're wholly remotely based, so that comes with its own kind of effect on your work-life balance, especially if they've got other commitment to children or whatever that may be. So that definitely has an impact on them. The less emphasis on the kind of admin side of things means that they can focus on, as Kirsty said, on what they want to do, the legal part of the job, and also the customer service part of the job. So that means they get a lot more rapport with the customers. Because of our portal, the customers also know what's going on, so they're not chasing for updates. So our phone calls aren't about, I haven't heard from you for 2 days, what's going on? It's about, okay, so I've just spoken to the surveyor and they've said this, what does that mean? So the interaction that they get with their customers and with the external partners, the estate agents or the brokers, whatever, is far more fulfilling, I think. It actually feels like you're doing a job as opposed to fighting fire and being chased all the time.
Yeah, I think a few people will be able to identify with that. Kirsty, what's your experience?
I think the biggest thing for us at the moment is the agile working ability. We had, when people came back from COVID, everyone except for one person was very keen to come back to the office. But as we've all settled down and life gets a bit back to normal, we do have quite a few members of staff who work a day at home perhaps, or will work in a different office. And having everything digitally and everyone using the same systems is allowing them to do that, which makes our staff happier, which makes them like us more, and makes, that's what you want. You want people to be able to easily make their life easier. And if that means, working from home, certainly working from different offices, then being digital really allows them to do that.
I think it makes it easier for customers too. Sorry, Sam.
No, go ahead, please.
If a customer wants to speak to somebody at 7 o'clock in the evening because, that suits them, then it's far easier to accommodate that, I think, with remote and agile working.
Yeah, so the presumably your clients feel the impact as well. Like, how tangible is that for your clients, would you say?
I suppose it depends on who the client is and what their situation is. And so it's difficult to kind of put down into figures or anything like that. But it's certainly, I think it's notable in the feedback that we get from the customers that there's that flexibility there.
And so in your case, your clients can do kind of quoting digitally, they'd be onboarded digitally, and you have a platform for kind of updates and communication with them throughout the process as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and then that's augmented by the interaction they've got with the property lawyer. They've got a mobile number for the property lawyer. The same person deals with it from beginning to end. And we use things like Zoom and Teams to have meetings with the customers at various stages of the transactions, and that has to happen so that we can confirm that we're dealing with who we think we're dealing, but also provides that rapport for the property lawyer that they're providing a service to somebody. They're not just somebody at the end of a phone or an email.
Cool. So back on your people. So one area where you've probably got quite different experiences then would be, so Sam, you've got a business that's been running about a year, and everybody you recruited would be sort of very aware that you're going to operate in this way, and that'd be an interesting thing to talk about as well. But Kirsty, you've probably had to take people on the journey over time, people who perhaps weren't digital and now are. Like, how's that gone, and what have you kind of learned from that experience?
It's definitely a journey. We're not there. You do, change is difficult, even if it has a good end result. We're learning that kind of people understanding that the thing they desire, so say agile working, to get to their desire, we almost have to kind of guide them that, like, this is what we've got to do to get there. It's, yes, we want to be there, we want to say yes to these requests, but this is how we get there, and that definitely helps. But you do get some resistance, not kind of unpleasant resistance, but just, particularly when everyone was incredibly busy, it was quite a push for us. We changed our case management system a year ago in the height of busyness. But people are definitely getting there, because they're seeing it from their own experiences as well, of just the world becoming more digital. But yeah, leading from the top has been really important. We've had to make sure all our kind of team managers as such are doing where we want everyone to end up with. But yeah, lots of training and lots of encouragement along the way.
So leading from the top, training, encouragement, less so than the stick and mandates. Then you're trying to move people along, perhaps a bit more at their own pace, but supporting them. Yeah.
We're trying to show them that by doing this, the benefits you'll get at the end, and that seems to be getting everyone there. Yeah.
And Sam, different for you guys, because obviously you were recruited new to your team in the last year. How's that gone? Have you managed to find people that were already digital, or are you taking people on that journey as well?
I think the pandemic helped a lot in that people were more experienced with having worked remotely, and I think having looked at or the feedback we get from candidates and consultants is that that's a lot of what people are looking for in a new role in the conveyancing is a remote option. That's certainly something that's, I think, popular amongst candidates, certainly maybe younger ones who haven't been used to working in a traditional firm with lots of paper around them. So yeah, I don't think it's been difficult for us, because we've recruited specifically for that, but part of our recruitment is also to make sure that whoever we recruit is adaptable to change too, because the way that we do things now isn't necessarily going to be the way that we do things in a year's time. Yeah. Because technology is always going to be changing, processes can always be refined, lender requirements will change, regulators' requirements will change. So we've got to make sure that we're continually adopting what's best practice.
So would it be fair to say that people's kind of technology or digital capabilities is actually part of your kind of recruiting process and important to that, or am I overstating the case?
No, we do check that as part of our recruitment process. I mean, that's not to say that full training on how we work is not provided when people join us. It is, but I think it's important that we make sure that people who work for us have got some basic knowledge of how to deal with things, even though that's just working at home. They've got the ability to do that without being disturbed. They've got the privacy for that. They've got the tech knowledge to set up a laptop, and if somebody's used to dictating into a machine and handing it to the secretary, we're probably not the right firm for them.
Yeah. And Kirsty, how your experience of recruitment, does it make recruitment easier or harder?
It does make it easier. I mean, there's definitely a market of people who want to work remotely. We're not quite in a place where we have any full-time remote workers. So we are still office based, and we quite like that. It works in the locations we're in and for our model, but definitely a kind of open mind to change and digital capabilities is something that you would be looking at. And yeah, as Sam said, if someone is used to dictating and handing a file to a secretary, it's not how we practice or have ever practiced, and it wouldn't work.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, one of the things I hear is a lot is people never go backwards, right? Once you've adopted the technology, the thought of going back and working in a way without it is pretty terrifying. So it can take a bit of a while to obviously to get there, but people don't tend to give it up once they've got it. In terms of kind of rolling these things out then, so you both have distributed workforces in different ways then, because Kirsty, you mentioned you've got 4 different offices.
Yeah.
And Sam, all of your team are remote. So there's presumably must be challenges there in kind of both kind of training and supporting people. Maybe, I don't know. Kirsty, what's your kind of experience of the kind of trying to manage rollouts across different offices and things?
So we changed case management just under a year ago, and prior to that, the last case management change we had was in 2013. So in 2013, we had a company come to us with a big box of laptops, and we had to put people in a room while they trained us. And this time all the training's been done remotely. We've done it in small groups in the offices because it's quite nice to be physically with other people while you're being shown something. So it's actually, logistically, it really isn't a problem anymore because everyone's so used to Zoom, and you can train people. We have meetings across the offices by Zoom. So it's, having those different locations isn't an issue, which is great.
And Sam, your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we're still relatively small, so we haven't had to bring in major developments yet. We haven't got huge teams of people, but the way we work is to engage them with any changes from the outset. So get their feedback as to, if we did this, what would you think? What would the benefit be for you? What would the benefit be for the customer? What would the issues be? And we get feedback from our one-to-ones with our property lawyers each month on what they think works and what they think doesn't work, what could be tweaked, what could be amended. So they're really involved in the process, which I think makes change then much easier to roll out because they've been involved in the process before it happens.
Yeah, I think I'm saying from my colleagues' experience of training people on technology as well, it's a key part of it, right? Making sure people understand the benefits, feel supported, and then actually talking to them, because it doesn't always go perfectly straight away, and it is a change for people, and not everybody moves at the same speed. And so actually, a kind of one and done training course and then hoping it's all okay is probably not going to be successful for everybody.
No, and it is that constant support, isn't it? Because there's always something that looks slightly different when you do something on a slightly different case. Or
yes, people will always find something in there that you've never seen before, even when you think you've seen it all before. What would you say your kind of like the most impactful technological changes that you've made? So the technology that you've adopted that's had the biggest impact that you now think, if I had to give anything up, it wouldn't be that one. What do you think had the biggest impact on your process or your way of working? I'll start with Sam again, if it's okay. Is there anything in particular you'd call out?
I think the whole onboarding process for us, because customers can get a quote from our website before they've even instructed us, they have to do ID checks, they have to do email checks, and then they can sign an electronic letter of engagement. So all that kind of is done before a property lawyer gets involved. You know, we've got customer service people that help people through that should they need it, but it's very easy to go through it without any interference from us. It's there if you need it, if you need any assistance, but getting to that point where the case is open, we're ready to go, and we've done all that before we then have to, you know, so the first engagement with the customer isn't, okay, you know, I'm your property lawyer, right, I need to see your passport, I need to see your I need to run some checks, and then we'll deal with things. I think that makes it smoother for everybody from the outset. It sets the whole transaction off on the right foot.
Cool, great. Kirsty, what would you call out?
I'm kind of going the other end. So definitely at the moment for us where we are in our journey, the post completion, it's been kind of having that all in one place where we can see really quickly whether there are any requisitions, whether there are cancellation dates, particularly having the stamp duty all kind of automated that pulls through from our case management. So everything you've done within the beginning part of the file, once you've completed, is the simplicity at that point is just really beautiful. It's just a few little buttons, and all the rest is done subject to the land registry doing their part as well.
Yeah. I'll take that process. So you're both using third-party software, not just the EDRS platform from HMLR, is that right? Because this is an area where everybody's kind of been encouraged to move to digital over the last year or so, but you chose to use a third-party provider rather than doing it directly with HMLR. What made you make that decision? For us, it was having kind of twofold for staff members, having everything in one place where all the information's already there. Also the billing, you know, getting the fees onto the file to make sure everything moves in the right way that it should. So, you know, monies are recovered is much simpler than getting, you know, the invoice and then getting it all uploaded by cashiers. Yeah. So that's made quite a big difference for us. And Sam, for you guys? Yeah,
same thing. You know, one-stop shop makes things so much easier for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, that's a property lawyer that's dealing with it. That's me as the compliance partner looking at it. You know, that's another property lawyer having to take over a matter. It's all in one place. It makes life so much easier. Yeah. And the accounts thing is a huge thing, and I would say that that's huge for any kind of a technology you're adopting. Don't just think about the property lawyers who are dealing with it. Don't forget the accounts department, because that's going to be your biggest problem if you forget that. Yeah,
and I think this is a key area of digital, because we're sort of touching on getting systems working together. So you've got InfoTrack is obviously just it's the, you know, conveyancing software, but you're talking about getting that information back into your case management systems, which is really where people are sort of living and breathing every day, right? And are most or all of the other services that you're using now integrated with that, or are you still having to use separate systems for different things?
We're still, not everything's integrated, no. So there are still separate systems, but our preference will always be something that can be or is integrated, because it does make administrative account side of things just so much simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're choosing any partner, that the integration is always a key consideration. So whether it might not be integrated initially, but it would always be the aim that it will be ultimately as part of our selection of that partner. Yeah. And only once we've tested it fully to make sure that it does what we want, then we would integrate it.
Yeah, I think it sort of comes back to having that single source of truth, and like you say, all the data in the same place, and sort of one view that you can trust, being the key thing there. Great. So we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to do well, hopefully we'll do some Q&A in a minute. So I just encourage anybody, if they do have any questions for either of you to pop those in the Q&A tab now, and we'll start looking at them soon. So a couple of other just last questions from me before we get to that. What would you, are there any pitfalls that you would try and kind of point out to people to maybe suggest things that they could avoid doing, or things that you've learned along the way? Any watch outs for anybody that's on this journey that you would call out for them? Sam?
I would make sure that you're utilising something for a good reason. What is it meant to achieve? There's no point just doing it for the sake of it. It's got to provide a benefit, whether that's for you, the customer, compliance. What is it meant to achieve? And test it would be the other one.
And Kirsty?
Yeah, I think what Sam says, I think there's a lot of products out there that sometimes can mean you might be achieving the same thing in a few different ways, and you don't need everything. Maybe kind of for us, starting small and adding as we're going, and as we're kind of moving through the elements of the transaction that we're making digital. But there's definitely a temptation just to throw it all in without, as Sam says, realizing really thinking about whether there is a tangible benefit to having that piece of tech involved in your processes.
How do you go about that kind of prioritization process? How do you decide what to do first?
I just looked at how I worked and what I would want to automate first, and what would make it easier, and also from a management side, what information I need when we're doing insurance, prop forms, CQS. And that's quite a big thing, because it's a lot of work if you don't have that information in the right place. So when I'm doing my insurance questions, I'm looking at the information I need and making sure those bits are automated first.
So really then, I suppose, looking at the kind of pain points in your day-to-day life and the kind of management of the business and targeting those. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Cool. Sam, is that same for you guys? Or I know you kind of mentioned the client experience a few times as well. Do you start there, or do you start with what are our problems?
We have roadmaps of various things that we want to do for different things. That might be for customers, that might be for compliance, that might be for efficiencies. So, and they've all got to be weighed up as to what's the most important. So we've got roadmaps for everything.
Good. Okay, well, I haven't got any questions in the Q&A yet, so I'm going to ask you guys, and this is fairly broad questions, so you can touch on anything you want. What advice would you give to perhaps the participants or any other law firm that's on this process based on what you've learned? So Sam, what would be your advice to other people first?
I suppose my position here is different, because we're a new firm with that focus. I think it's very difficult or different if you're doing that in an established firm, so you're kind of trying to steer it from a different course than it's been in the past. In that situation, I think it's really important that you've got somebody that's dedicated to it, rather than somebody trying to fit in and do that as a project on top. It's all too consuming otherwise.
Sorry, I lost you for a second. You're back.
Sorry, did you hear me?
Yeah, I did. I lost the visual, not the sound. Unfortunately, I hope everybody else is okay there as well. So would you mind just quickly recapping that advice? Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I think, as I say, my role is different because we're on a firm and it's established what we're trying to achieve. I think it's different if you're trying to change how a department has previously worked, how it's going to work. And I think whoever is tasked with that needs to have that as a real focus, and not do that as an add-on to something else. It's really difficult to do that whilst fee earning or doing something else at the same time.
Yeah, okay. So that dedicated focus, making it part of somebody's role.
Yeah.
Perfect. And Kirsty, what would be your advice?
Yeah, definitely the same thing. It's a big process. and just also making sure that everyone's, as Sam and both of you said, everyone's involved and consulted and understands the benefits of where you're going, so you're not just getting them to change for the sake of change, that they can see the tangible benefit and how it's all going to follow through, so that you've got people fully on board while you're then kind of taking them through the journey and changing the way they do everything.
Is that the biggest investment in being more digital? Is it financial, or is it actually dedicating people's time to it, or to the investment in change? Like what have you, when you're considering doing it, what's the thought process there?
Time is huge, because you can, with the costs of most of the digital costs, you can actually just set aside, set off against the savings you're going to make, even on the most basic thing like stamps and paper and files. So time is definitely the bigger investment, I'd say.
Sam, is that true of you guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think the trade-offs that also come with it, things like PII, risk, that's something that I think is easily overlooked, but is actually really important to why you would do these things anyway.
Yeah, and is that talking about PII is really interesting, because obviously if you took something like onboarding, you can be more secure in terms of the checks you're doing. They're better than physical checks, those kinds of things. Is that the benefit that insurance see, or is it the fact that you're able to give them better data about how you work because they're digital processes? What's the real benefit there?
I think it's probably a bit of both. There are many solutions out there. You've got to prove why you chose the solution that you've gone for, and then prove the benefits of that to your insurers.
Yeah. What would you say, Kirsty?
Yeah, I mean, as Sam says, and also, there is an element that you do, being able to prove what you've done, for in a regulation way is really important. So having everything consistently dealt with, and where you can find it in the same place, so that you can show, because it is no longer good enough just to have done the money laundering. You have to, it has to be there. There has to be evidence that you've done it. So that's quite a big thing as well, is to be able to easily prove what you're doing.
Yeah, that's something that I've seen come up in discussions with regulators and from compliance experts as well. They're like, great, you do those things, you can't prove it, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And that's the bit that kind of protects you as a firm as well. So actually, so having those documents, but also just having that digital audit trail that says this was done at this time with these people, and then that's your kind of defense if you ever need it, I suppose. Still don't have any questions, and we're almost up to time. So I'm going to ask you one last question before I let you go. Is there anything, you've talked a few things about how you kind of work differently, and we've talked about, the benefits of kind of being more digital. Is there anything that you don't have to do now because you've taken the step to be more digital, that you're, or what is the thing that you don't have to do now that you're most pleased you don't have to do anymore?
I think for me, doing the prop form this year, one question on there that used to take a lot of time to extract the information, even though we had a case management system and it was utilized well. This year I pressed one button and it saved me approximately 2.5 hours, and that was lovely. And that was the reason we chose our current case management system. And it was nice to be proved correct in my own head to myself.
So for preparing your proposal forms for your insurance, That sounds like I know that's painful for lots of people, so that's pretty good. Sam, what don't you have to do anymore that you love not having to do?
I love not walking around the office and seeing bits of paper anywhere and thinking, should they be there? What are they for? Or seeing someone's desk covered in paper, and so yeah.
One of my we did a conference last year, and one of my favourite quotes from it was from Tracy Thompson, who's the lead assessor at CQS, and she said when they do audits, she's like, paper's a risk, and I just thought it was really interesting to hear her say that, because paper has been people's kind of comfort blanket and sort of security status for so long. And she didn't say it's wrong and you shouldn't do it, but she's just saying whenever I see a process that's reliant on paper, I know there's a risk there. So it's interesting, really interesting, I thought, to see how those kind of mindsets are changing as well, even with the regulators. Right, I'm going to call it there because we've gone slightly over time, but I'd just like to say a massive thank you to both of you for sharing your time and insights and expertise with us. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
And then for everybody, thank you for attending. So there's still quite a few people here. We will send out a recording of this so that you can have it and you can share it with colleagues or watch it again if you really want to. But thank you very much for joining us today.